Hola, mis amores. Welcome to the Get Unstuck podcast, a show that teaches you how to awaken your self awareness. I'm your host, Nori Pouncil, but you can call me Nori, a Garifuna Afro Latina, a spiritual guide, helping overstressed millennial women eliminate overthinking and make time for themselves so they can feel inner peace by awakening their self awareness. It was roughly 2 p.m., and I was laying on my living room couch. I was trying to take a nap. I was home early from work that day because I wasn't feeling well. My body was feeling discomfort or pain of some sort. The phone rang. I answered. On the other end, there was a voice crying, hurting. I could feel the pain from her tone. She blurted out, "They've killed him. They've killed our Califa." The voice belonged to my mother, and the call came almost 3 years ago to date this week. Califa was my favorite uncle, the only person who, growing up, loved me unconditionally. I didn't have to meet any expectations to enjoy his love, and his death introduced me to new depths of suffering that later turned into healing. After this experience, I wondered, why don't we talk about death? Why do we run away from it? And how can we prepare for it in a more conscious and intentional way? Is that even possible? Well, my guest today, Alua Arthur, has some answers. Answers I know that you will find helpful because I found them helpful. She's a death doula, attorney, and the founder of Going with Grace, an end-of-life planning organization that exists to support people as they answer the question, what must I do to be at peace with myself so that I may live presently and die peacefully? Together we had a raw conversation about how death brought us back to life. Somehow, during this episode, there were tears, laughter, and healing. She opened up about being severely depressed. She shared how she defines being authentic and how powerful that can be. And she spoke about her work, the beauty, the challenge, and the surrender. My hope for you as you listen to this conversation is simple. Become a little less resistant towards death and allow it to inspire you to live. Get ready to awaken your self-awareness, starting right now.
Oh.
What a fantastic start. This is like the
We're
best
off to
start ever.
Great start. Great start.
I'm loving it. This is it. I couldn't ask for a better start.
I am a disaster in 3/4 today. Hold on a second, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not wearing any earrings.
I noticed. I can hear you fantastically. Is that a word?
Hello? There you are. Can hear me?
I can hear you. I was asking if fantastically was a word.
Let's make it one.
I feel like it could be. You know?
It should be. Fantastically? I think it is a word.
I feel like it should be. I'm originally from Honduras and I make up words all the time. So I have to check in with people.
Understood. That's totally fair. And you are totally entitled to make up whatever words you would like.
I appreciate that.
Funny words. Because sometimes there are things that don't have words that should.
I agree. And I also think there are words that should be used for other things that we don't use them for.
Yes.
That would work.
Yes. I would also agree with that. Fantastically. I think it's a word, though.
I think it's a word, too. And I'm very in alignment with that. So I'm here for it. Alua.
Yeah.
Alua. I love that. What does it mean?
I'm not sure. It's my dad's aunt's name. That's the name I received.
What would you like it to mean? What does it mean to you?
Glitter pants.
Ooh. I like that.
That'll work for me, too. Glitter fairy pants.
I love that. Alua. I love it because I can pronounce it in Spanish.
Yeah, which is very
Almost.
funny. In different parts of the world, my name sounds so different, Like can't think of some places like Elua, Elua, Elua,
Yes. Yes.
Elua, but no, Elua. I guess it's similar, but the language that my name comes from is a tonal language, and so small variations in it make a big difference in how something is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so Elua is different than Alua is different than Elua.
I love that because I also speak this other language called Garifuna.
Mm.
And in Garifuna, your name will be like Alua.
Hmm.
But in Spanish, it's a little bit different. So,
A little different. Is Garifuna from Honduras?
yeah, so it is it's spoken in Honduras, in, why am I drawing a blank? In Honduras, in Belize, is wherever the Garifunas are located. So we are in Honduras, we are in Belize, we are in Guatemala, St. Vincent. Well, we're originally from St. Vincent. I don't know how many of us are still there, but it's spoken there in the US, because there's about almost a quarter of a million of us here now.
Wow,
I
that
know.
sounds like a lot.
It's a lot of people.
This is the very first time I've heard of this, though.
Oh my God.
And there's
Please.
so many of y'all. I feel like I've
Yeah.
been lied to.
I feel like you've met us. You just didn't know it was us.
Okay, so next time I meet somebody from that corner of the world, I'm gonna try to remember Garifunas and ask.
Yes. And if you do find them, please let me know. I'm
I
always on
will.
a hunt for my people.
Great. If I find any, I'll be like, I know one. Her name is Nori.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, Alua, thank you so much for did I
Elua.
Elua.
Yeah.
Elua.
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 Yeah. Emphasis on the A.
Elua.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay,
Elua.
if I say it wrong again, please correct me.
I will.
Elua.
Yeah.
Elua, thank you for being
Yeah.
here today. I
My
appreciate you.
pleasure.
So, in preparation for this episode, I've been like watching everything that has to do with you on the internet. It's a little creepy.
It definitely sounds creepy.
Does that scare you?
Not really. I mean, I guess I put it out and I know that people are watching it, but it is weird when people watch it.
So I've been watching it and reading it and listening to it. And I wanted to have you on the podcast last season for selfish reasons. I think at that time I had been struggling with depression, and I had just dealt with the death of one of my loved ones. And I just felt like, listen, universe, I need this woman. I need to talk to her. Can you just like do your magic?
Mm-hmm.
And the universe was like, you have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you don't always do well with that part, right? But I waited, and I'm so grateful that the universe said I had to wait, because I am just ready for a different conversation now.
Great.
And I'm
That's
so
exciting.
available. So I'm excited.
Me too.
Alua.
Yes. Nori.
Yes, I got it right. I got it right. Why is it that we don't talk more about death?
We're uncomfortable with it. It makes us feel uncomfortable. We like a lot of certain things in life, like just as humans, we like things to be certain. We like things to feel like they're in our control, and death isn't by any means in our control. I was reading a news article this morning about a woman, a young mother, 22 years old, who was walking with her kid down the stairs in a train station in Brooklyn, slipped and fell and died. 22. I really doubt that she thought that her life was going to end then. And there's nothing that any of us can do to stop these types of things from happening. And it makes us feel not in control. And I think that's how we don't want to talk about it. We want to pretend it doesn't exist.
But it's crazy, because it's the one thing that's certain that's going to happen to all of us.
I know, but we behave like it's a big secret somehow.
I know. We don't even want to like think about it.
No, people don't want to thinking. People definitely don't want to think about it. People are talking about it more and more, because it is the one thing that unifies us all, right? That means that everybody is going to experience it. And if you don't want to think about your own death, we can think about the deaths of other people. And we do talk about the deaths of other people. When celebrities die, we're in conversation about it regularly. Yet talk about my mother dying, and all of a sudden it's like, no, don't go there. Talk about myself dying. Whoa, slow down. So we just have such an aversion to this big, uncomfortable, emotional thing that is not a secret. So we behave like it is.
How do we get better at that?
We keep talking about it.
Yeah.
We talk about it as often as possible. We think about it a lot. We prepare for it.
Mm-hmm.
We behave like it's going to happen. We behave like it's going to happen at any moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm shaking my head as you say we behave as if it's going to happen, because it's almost like we've convinced ourselves that it's not going to happen.
Yeah, most people have. Like, you'd be surprised at the many people I hear say, well, I'm not going to die. I'm like, huh?
Really?
Look at that. Look at that. The one person.
Wow. I didn't know you
Yeah.
were so in denial about this whole situation.
I know. I know. I know.
It makes
What
me
can
a
we
little sad, but at the same time, it just reminds me why it's important to have these conversations so that we can get more normal about normalizing death, the thing that is for sure going to happen.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's already going down. I remember listening to one of your interviews and you talked about how you were severely depressed. And are you okay talking about that?
Love talking about it.
Tell me about, how did you know you were severely depressed?
I'd stopped relating to the world around me as though I was in it. I'd started relating to it like something that was totally separate from me, like I was in a room looking out a window at the world rather than me as a part of it. I mean, some very obvious things to me, but I stopped wearing color. I was wearing a lot of black and dark blues, and I normally have a lot of color on. I was still able to smile and engage with people, but I always felt alone in it all, and not, I mean, lonely is different. It's more just alone, like nobody could understand what it was that I was experiencing, and there would never be any way for anybody to know what I was going through, and so I didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think triggered your depression?
I think I hadn't been paying attention to what was going on in my world. I was really diverting and distracting myself from this discomfort that I was having with my life. I wasn't in service. I wasn't living in full contribution. I wasn't authentic. I was just doing the motions, doing the things that I thought that I should. And it wasn't, I wasn't full. And I ignored it for so long and kept doing things to try and get away from it. Like I'd change jobs, or I'd go on a trip, or I'd break up with that guy, or I'd buy some new clothes or something, anything to do something other than feel the things that I was feeling, which was profound discomfort and almost a disappointment with what my life had become. It wasn't terrible objectively by any means. I had a great job. I was practicing law part-time at a legal aid. So I was definitely living in service. I was doing social justice work. I was dating great guys. I would go on these great trips. But I wasn't fulfilled in any way. And I just kept trucking without stopping to say, hold on a minute, what's going on here?
Are you fulfilled now?
Oh, like you wouldn't know. Like I have a hard time explaining sometimes. I feel like I'm fully in my body. All parts are full.
Do you feel weird about it?
About what?
About how much joy you have?
Sometimes I do, when it's hard to pinpoint a reason why, which is so silly, as though we're not entitled to joy just because, like there has to be a reason, But yes, I feel very joyful, and I sometimes feel guilty about it. It's probably because I know the opposite.
Yes. And you've been there. So you know how it feels too.
Yeah, you too, right?
Yeah, I did. So I struggled with depression really my whole life. I will learn this later once I was doing the digging, but I wasn't diagnosed until 2016, which was the same year that my favorite uncle was murdered in Honduras. And that's actually where this podcast came from. It's a result of wanting to discover what brought me joy again. Yeah. And I realized that these conversations were a big part of it. Just learning from women that there's some that look like me, some that didn't look like me, some that did things that I did, and some that did things that I've never even thought about. And I just felt like I see beauty in other people, and right now I might not see it in myself, but if I start seeing it in them, I can just see it a little bit more in me. And that's kind of where this project came from. And it was very hard because I can relate to your comments around being alone but not being lonely. I don't know if that's the right way of positioning it, but it's like I'm in a room, I'm in a party, everyone is having a great time, and I'm like, no one is here. No one
Right.
understands how I feel. No one can sense what's happening under my skin. And I cannot even begin to try to explain it to them, because if I did, they'll look at me and say, have another drink and just enjoy the party. And I'm like, I can't do that.
At the root of the word enjoyment is joy, right? And so often in the absence of it, it's like I can't enjoy if I'm not experiencing any joy. It literally means enjoy. But you know, I'd be out socially, and it would look like I was supposed to be having a good time, but it felt like I was watching the party. You know, yeah. So much so that I stopped going altogether. Like I just stopped engaging.
And people almost look at you like, I used to be the life of the party. I still think I am in a different way now, but my friends will say that about me. They're like, oh my God, you're so much fun. And I'm like, am I? I don't really know what fun is like anymore. How do you describe that? How do you describe that?
It's a rough feeling. It's tough.
I love that you use the term authenticity and fullness kind of interchangeably, because what does it mean to be authentic to you?
Well, I think it means to be in my fullest expression, you know, as a human. Like all parts of myself are firing. I'm engaging different parts of myself consistently, not all at the same time, but consistently different parts are coming out to shine. I'm aware of what those parts are, and I give them a chance to play without apology and certainly without regret. Yeah.
How long did it take you to feel like you had healed from your depression?
I think I'm still healing. I think I'll be healing for the rest of my life, because it was such a massive experience, and one that ultimately was pretty defining, that, you know, sometimes I'll have a couple of rough days and begin to wonder if it's coming back. And then I'm full on like, oh no, oh gosh, no. And so to me, that says it's not healed, because there's still such a resistance to it. I think perhaps if I get to a place where I'm like, oh, if I'm depressed, I'll be fine again, because then I'd be neutral about it rather than have such a strong resistance to it, you know? I'm still in process constantly.
How did you learn how to accept the parts of you that you didn't think were the best?
I looked at them a long time, allowed them to come to the surface, recognized, and like, it sounds so cliche, but accepted, like, okay, well, this is a part of me. This is part of who I am. You know, I'm generally pretty joyful, but at this moment in time, I'm not. Well, there's me that is depressed also. There's me that is irritated in traffic. There's me that was rude to the cashier because I was having a rough day. All parts of myself exist. And if I can live in awareness and in relationship to that, in those full places also, then it's fine. But when I try to resist or try to separate, then no can do.
One of the things that I work with my clients with, overcoming some of these feelings and kind of get into healing or some form of healing on their own, is acceptance. And I ask a lot about that, because I think it's one of the hardest things. It was one of the hardest things for me too. I just was still struggling with who I thought I was supposed to be and not living up to that picture.
Right.
And I just remember sitting in my office or in my living room when I used to live in DC and thinking, you're not all of that stuff that you think you are, but you can be if you decide to accept it and surrender to it. And why is surrender so hard?
Control. Because we want to control. And because we don't trust.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Because if we trusted, then we wouldn't have to control. We wouldn't have to know what was going on and make it fit a certain thing all the time. And when we stop doing both of those things, then we can actually surrender. But I mean, we want to control everything all the time, as we started this conversation talking about. In life, we just want to stay on top.
It's really interesting, because I find that anytime I let go of control is when the universe blows my mind. It's like it was just waiting for me to like let it go, so it could be like, all right, now let me show you what we can really do with this situation. And I'm just like, no, give me the crumbs, please. Give me the crumbs.
Yeah. And I've like decided that something is for me. And it's like, girl, just you wait. Why don't you sit down someplace and lovingly shut up And when you are ready, when I am ready, I will come. And I'm like, but come on, come on, come on, come on.
Now is the time. This is when I
Now,
want it.
I want him, I want now, I want this job, I want that thing. It's like, no, they don't have it in your size. So stop trying to shop for it.
I love it. They don't have it in your size. So relax. Take a breather and relax.
Relax.
So we haven't told the folks what you do yet, but I think they can kind of get a feel. This is Alua.
Yes.
Yes. And you are a death doula. Is that the name that it's okay to call you?
Yes, I'm a death doula and an end-of-life planner. I do both things to help people preparing for death in one way or another.
So in preparation for our conversation, I asked my followers if they get an opportunity to talk to a death doula, what would they ask her? And people came back and were like, what's a death doula?
Great. So should we start there?
Let's start there.
A death doula is somebody who provides non-medical care and support for the dying person and the family and the loved ones, and the care of support through the dying process. For somebody like me, that also looks a little bit more expanded into end-of-life planning. So working with healthy people to get their affairs in order for the end of their lives. When people start to think about the fact that one day they're going to die, they're like, I really should have a plan for my funeral, or tell somebody what I think about life support, or what my passwords are, where my money is. So I help people create those end-of-life plans. When people are getting closer to the end of life, I help them create a dying experience that feels most authentic to them as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then after death, I help family members wrap up the affairs of their loved one's life. So closing out bank accounts and figuring out how to get in touch with Sprint so that they can turn off the cell phone, or not turn off the cell phone and find a way to download all the voicemail messages or whatever they might need. Because for anybody who's experienced the death of somebody close to them, if you are part of that great circle of support or somebody very closely in a relationship, you know that there's a bunch of stuff to get done after someone dies. Mm-hmm. And we're typically in such grief that I think it's cruel to have to sit on hold with the utility company for 45 minutes to try to make it through some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so my job is to support people through that.
Wow. So you make the calls for them?
I'll make the calls for them if need be. Create a very clear plan. Here's the first thing that you should do. Here's the second thing you should do. I'll also help if there's a particular thing. I might do it for them, mm-hmm. or just tell them the way to do the thing that they're trying to do.
Wow. Wow. I'm just here like listening to you, and usually I would ask people about why they think their work is important, but I already know your work is important because I wish I would have had you when I was going through my own loss. So thank you for doing this.
I'd say you're welcome, but it really is my pleasure. Like, I get a lot out of this, but then also you're welcome. And I wish I'd been there when you were experiencing this.
But I feel like you have been in this weird way, because after that experience, it's almost around the time I learned about you. So like not instantaneously after, but like within that time I learned about you, and I was just like, yo, she is dope, man. Like I've been telling everybody about it, and they're like, Death Doula, who puts those words together? Like, no, I don't know. I think that's weird. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's weird though. I think we need to talk about these things because we are all going to die, and we're so afraid of accepting that. And then using that to inspire us to live, which I feel like is what you're doing.
That's the gem. I mean, what else is the point of considering this scary, uncomfortable thing? Because the juice of it is that it does inspire us how to live. When I'm looking at my death, when I'm considering my death, I'm thinking about all parts of my life. I'm thinking about all parts of who I am, because all of that is going to stop. Mm-hmm. And so it encourages me to eat the cake and to tell somebody how I feel, and to look at the sunset if I really enjoy them. It puts the focus on the things that matter to me as a human, because one day I'm not going to be able to do those same things in that same way, regardless of what you believe about what happens after you die. When the process of the body occurs, you're not able to do the things that you used to be able to do in this body. I can't touch, I can't smell, I can't talk. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Something's going to change. And so when we consider our death, we have an opportunity to think about the things that we would want to do before we die and then do them.
Mm-hmm. When I was listening to some of the conversations you had, you talked about death meditation. What is that?
That is a guided experience where people that have some fears or are just even curious to see where their rubs might be against it, go through a guided meditation where we go through some of the contemplations on dying, and then I take people through the process of the body, shutting down, and then into a death, and then we come back out and process all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about where the fear is, if it exists at all, what the discomfort is, and where they need support or can focus on in order to alleviate those fears.
Wow, I feel like we can all use that. I know
Everybody.
I can use that.
Everybody. The Buddhists preach meditating on death daily. You know.
Really?
Yeah. It's a thing.
I'm sitting here thinking like I want to do that, and at the same time, like I don't even know how my body decays. Like I mean, obviously not right now, guys, because clearly, you know, we're here. But when that time comes, I have like no idea like what happens to my body. Like is the TV saying accurate? Is that how it goes down?
What happens on TV?
Yeah, like I think on TV. Well, usually they cut it off after they put the casket in the ground, and then it's done.
Oh yeah, no, we don't see any of that in media. We don't know what it actually looks like. I think that's also part of the reason people are so scared of dead bodies, is because they don't know that right after somebody dies, they look like themselves for quite some time. And then as the functions start happening, like you lose some water, and so everything starts to change color, and the cheeks get sallow, and then the eyes get flat, and like the cheeks sink in. We already know about rigor mortis because we hear it all the time on like CSI or, you know, Law and Order. Law and Order. That's the one word always talking about rigor mortis. But we probably don't know that rigor goes away. It only lasts for a period of time, and then the body gets soft again.
Really?
So yeah, I'd encourage you to, maybe spend some time imagining what that process might be like. You give yourself your own death meditation.
Listen,
and I laugh. Gosh, it's not funny. It's challenging.
But it probably is at the same time. Like you got to find humor in these things because it's gonna happen. Like there's no point in being serious about it because it's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah.
At least that's my approach. I don't know how helpful that is to y'all though.
There's a lot of humor in it. We laugh so much during our end of life planning consultations. We laugh when people are getting close to the end of life. It's not always this sad, solemn, somber, heavy thing. It is serious. It is profound. There can also be beauty, and there can still be joy, even though it's painful. Those two things can coexist. It's not one or the other.
I think you're so right about that, because I think we've been raised or doctrinated to believe that if there's discomfort or pain, it's not supposed to be there, and you shouldn't deal with it or you shouldn't face it. But through depression, I learned that when I started healing, I felt that a lot of my healing came from sitting in that pain and dealing with that discomfort and just realizing I feel this pain. I feel the discomfort. How do I exit this? What is causing me this pain? What is the root of this discomfort? And then just allowing myself to work through that. And I think this is the hard part because, it sucks. It's so painful.
Yeah. And absolutely that. When we're with it, like when we're really with it, we can see the light also, I read a saying someplace that, oh shoot, I'm going to mess it up. Let me see if I can do my best. That if you are not seeing the light in the darkness, you're not looking at it long enough. I said, yeah. That applies to so many things. Even if you sit in a dark room for so long, you will eventually begin to see specks of light. And same thing with our pain, same thing with our death, with everything.
Because light cannot be without dark, and dark cannot be without.
Exactly.
They just coexist.
Yep.
So tell me about Cuba.
Ooh, well, Cuba was like the thing that shifted everything. Also at the height of my depression, I was on a medical leave of absence from work. So this is about 6 years ago. And I was on a medical leave of absence from work for depression because I literally could not go to work anymore. I was like, this is not going to end well. And I just need some time. And I went to Cuba after a bunch of serendipitous meetings, ended up in Cuba. And then I was running through the street in a little town called Trinidad in Cuba. It's the oldest city, I think, in Cuba. And a car almost hit me. And I slammed my hands on the hood and then eventually made it to the bus stop, which is where I was going. And a woman got on the bus with me and started chatting with me. And she was 36 years old and she had uterine cancer.
Wow.
And she was sick, but she was on this trip to see the places in the world she wanted to see before she died. And I was so awed by her, but I was also like, wait a minute. So you have this disease that could kill you right now? That means you're going to die. And started asking all types of questions about her death. I don't know why I thought that it was okay, because societally it's not, or we think it's not. But I asked her all these questions about her death and she answered them. And then I was thinking more and more about it. And she was asking me some questions. And there were questions I probably should have been asking myself anyway, because I was in the middle of what is a terminal condition if it's not cured, which is depression, right? Like, yeah, same to her, just mine wasn't physical. Well, it had become physical in that I wasn't eating very well. I wasn't eating like much at all. Anyway, so during that bus ride is when I was like, why are we not talking about this thing? Everybody's going to die. I want to start talking about this thing more. And then I decided that this was going to be like, I was so clear that I was going to work in death at that moment. And then we got off the bus. She stayed with me for 14 hours on the bus. We got off together. Yeah. And as we were going to bed that night, she told me that she'd been in the car that had almost hit me earlier on, before we'd even left, before I'd even made it to the bus stop.
Of course.
Yeah. Every single time I say I get chills, and without fail, every single time I get chills.
I have like goosebumps.
Yeah. Because there was no, I mean, even on days when I'm like, what am I doing? And why am I doing this of all things? I'm like, yeah, but you're so filled up by this. And there's no denying that this is what I'm here to do. No denying it. I was literally on a crash course with my work and in Cuba as a result after this deep, terrible depression. And it was the thing that brought me back out of it. Like, I was really silly, but true, say death is what brought me back to life. Considering it, being with it, considering my own, considering somebody else's. That's when I started to feel real and human again. Was thinking that one day I am actually going to die, and what would that mean?
It's so interesting that you say that death brought you back to life, because that's also how I feel in a way. And the way how full circle that went down, like, you know, you hit in the car and next thing you know, this person you're on this car, like who's about to die or who can die literally at any moment, which is weird that we say it like that, right? Because either one of us can die at any moment. This can literally be the last conversation that we have at any moment.
Any moment.
Anyone. And it still feels weird saying it.
Yeah. And it's so true. It's just so true. I mean, I'm home right now, but I could not make it into my bedroom from the office. A blood clot could be traveling at like anything could happen at any moment. And rather than allowing it to cripple us with fear, we can just say, well, shoot, what is the thing that I really need to say? So that if this is it, I've said the thing, you know? And gratefully, I'm talking about death, and that's how I want to go out anyway. So I think we're doing okay.
And I'm experiencing joy hearing about it. So I think, yeah, this is it. It's been great.
We're doing all right.
We're doing all right. Yeah. So I remember listening to one of your conversations. I think it was on Extremist Love Radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a juicy one, by the way.
So good.
Yeah, after you're done listening to this one, go listen to that conversation. It was really, really, really beautiful and like insightful. And I love the joke that you shared about the colleague that was like in her 70s about the secretion of the body and putting the thumb in the butt.
That was good.
I'm like, there's some great humor right there. I was like, this is it. This is amazing. How does it feel to do this work?
It feels incredible. I feel lucky. I feel honored. You know, it's such an intimate moment for everyone. It's super intimate. We're completely vulnerable. And I get to be there with people through it. Like, what a position of honor. Yeah, I feel lucky to be chosen to do this consistently.
Wow. And
And also to talk about it. What'd you say?
I'll say he chose you and you chose it too. Like
we chose each other for sure.
That's beautiful. I love that you love it, because I think a lot of times we do things that we don't love, and you can tell when we don't love it, and I can tell you love it. And I just love how it brightens you up.
I love it.
You're not looking at her beautiful face, but I am. And
sweetest. I love this work. And I think that, life is really too short not to do things that you love, unless that you can like trace it back to something. Like, I do not love laundry. I must do it because I need to wear clothes, and I love clothes. So there we go. I do my dang laundry.
I don't love doing dishes, and it stems from the fact that I did dishes for so many years when I was a little kid. Like, that was the type of family we grew up in. Like, you kids have to do the dishes, and I hated it. So now, like, we hired somebody to come do the dishes. That's kind of how serious this is.
Are there homes in which the kids don't do dishes?
Yes, there are homes in which kids don't do dishes. I've been made aware that there are homes in which children do not have to do dishes. They can choose not to do dishes, and they are not expected to do laundry or fold their own clothes.
Make their beds.
That can be taken care of by somebody else, usually mom, in the cases that I've heard of.
I can know that. Yeah, I can imagine. I guess I can imagine families where there's a lot of affluence and abundance, hiring somebody to do that stuff so the kids don't actually have to do the dishes. But with families, regular middle class or working families, I would think that kids do dishes, but it sounds like not.
Well, you also have to take into consideration that some women, by how they've been raised and the things they've been taught, they define themselves by some of these things. Like, I'll tell you a funny story. Like, when I took my now husband to Honduras to see my mom, well, not to see her, but like to kind of meet the family and stuff. At a point, he came in the room and was like, "Hey, do you want something to eat? I'm gonna go to the kitchen. Do you want something to eat?" And my aunts were like, "Excuse me, are you not gonna go and get the food for your man? Why is he getting you food?" So like, it was a crazy thing for them. And I told them, well, we are both adults. We have moving body parts. He can go take care of food, and I could go take care of food, but it's okay. And they were really like, that when the auntie looks at you like,
when the auntie looks at you, yes,
I don't know.
The auntie look. It totally makes sense.
You know what I'm talking about? The auntie look, when you're like, auntie, please.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah,
but it's still going on.
And also, cultural and so many influences, right? So many influences. And I'm currently in a relationship with this beautiful man.
Ooh.
Who, I know, it's so fun. Yes. It's fun and it's deepening. Like, I'm learning and stretching and growing too. And I'm like, and it's fun. And it's also a lot of fun.
I love your growing sound. That's my growing sound too. Like,
deep growl. But he's also West African, and so we have similar cultural backgrounds, yet the relationship looks very much like a traditional American one, I guess in some ways, because given our cultural backgrounds, there should be particular gender roles that we assume, but we don't. And we were just in Ghana together, and that was an experience, because it was the same type of like, well, he's my man, but we're in this equal relationship, so I'm not going to cater to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless I want to, how I want to, when I want to, of course.
And there are many times when I want to, because that man is so deserving.
Hey. I love love.
Me too.
We're like these two giddy high schoolers on this podcast right now. Just like, yes, tell me more about him. How awesome is he? Yes.
Right. And we're so giddy. We're talking about death and we're still like, and love. Yeah. You know what's very interesting though lately, and I've been thinking this often, that we, like, being in a relationship with him is bringing my fears of death more to the forefront. Yeah. Because one morning I rolled over on a pillow and I was like, you can't die, okay? And he was like, I'll do my best. Yeah.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Facts. Yeah. I know it's going to happen, but I don't know. Yeah.
That's how it is with my husband. So when my uncle was murdered, during my depression, I went to this hyper sensitivity to him not being in front of my face all the time.
Yeah.
So he would like leave the house and I would be in panic the whole time. I'm texting, I'm freaking out. And it just wasn't with him. It was also with like anyone that I loved that there wasn't in my presence. I just became really afraid that they were going to die. And it was crazy because they are going to die. But I just felt like they're going to die right now. I cannot handle them right now dying. And it was so bad that I would like text him if he was late. And by late, I literally mean not late at all. Like, I don't even mean on time. I mean like early. And I'm like, hey, where are you? Like, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, one day he was like, do you have some abandonment issues? Because I just feel like you keep on asking me where I'm going. And babe, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm here. And I'm like, no, you're going to die. And I don't like it. And it was like really intense the whole time. And that's how I knew that I was getting better. I was healing because those feelings just became less and less and less over time. And it was so discomforting. And I'm like, I love you too much for you to die. Don't do that. Like, seriously, don't do that. I'm not joking.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to do my best. So when you said that, I'm like, what is the other answer you give? I'm going to do my best. That's all we can ask for.
Right. And even your best still means that you're going to die.
You're going to do it.
You know, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. That's a total normal reaction that you were having. And people often have that. Yeah, they often have that reaction when somebody close to them dies, and particularly a brutal way. You know, a murder is brutal and violent and not the deaths we think of. Grandma at 97 lived a long life and is sick and frail, and then she dies. This is somebody who, I don't know your uncle obviously or your story, but it's an intervening event and it's terrifying. And I think it does like shake that foundation of control, because if something terrible like that can happen at any moment, your man literally could walk out the door and never come back.
Yes. It was very tough to deal with because at first I was fighting against it. Like we talked about surrender earlier, but like at first I had this resistance about it. Like, no, that can't happen to you. And the only way that I know in my head that I can avoid it from happening to you is if you sit right here and you don't go anywhere that's not out of my sight. And I'm like, as I say this right now, I'm telling myself, girl, you was going through it. Like,
going through it.
You know that cannot go down like that. Like, this person is not attached to you like in that way. Like, and I'm just sitting right now realizing the extent to which I was hurting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I honor him for being there with you and being able to like respond to your needs. I think, obviously, I don't know anything about your own story, but as you've been talking about it, it sounds like you were heard on some level. He did his best. What we can ask for, right?
That's all we can ask for.
Yeah.
So you asked Bay not to do that. I love that. And so he said he wants to do his best.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
How are you working through these feelings? Because they're only going to get stronger for the more you love him.
Yeah. Sitting with it, sitting about what that would mean and him not being there anymore. And what is that like? And we're in a long distance relationship. So we have periods of apart, like we're apart right now. And when he's not here, I'm like, well, what if he was dead? He's not in front of me. I mean, he could be dead. I think he's still alive because he just texted me. And it doesn't have to be okay, but I do get to be with that feeling and just be with, as we've been mentioning over and over again, being with it, sitting with it. I'm going to learn something from it. So most definitely I say all the things that I need to say to him as often as possible.
My husband and I, we were in a long distance relationship for 2 years before we got married. So we were long distance for 2 years, and then we weren't even in the same state. And then we got engaged and we moved into 1-bedroom apartment. Just going to leave that there.
We're going to have to talk about this. Maybe not on the podcast. I got questions. I have a lot of questions.
2 years. And after I've done it, and after also being in relationships with people that were close to me, I think every couple should go through a period of time like this. And it just built our foundation so strongly. I remember one day taking the train, the Amtrak. I'm originally from New York, and he was working in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I took the train to go see him. And on the train, this man was convincing me that he was cheating on me.
What?
On the train. So I'm talking to this guy, like, so you know how people sit next to you and they start conversing and you're like, okay, fine, like, sure, I'll engage in dialogue. I'm a good person, right? Whatever. So I'm talking to this guy and he's like, oh, so where are you going? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to Harrisburg. Like, my boyfriend lives there. He's like, oh, you guys had a long distance relationship. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to tell you right now, don't waste your time, sister. That man is cheating on you. He got a side piece in Harrisburg.
No, he didn't.
He sure did. And I was like, oh, okay, thank you for telling me. I appreciate it. But I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Imagine if I didn't have a strong foundation, I would have went to Harrisburg and broke up with my man, and then I wouldn't be married right now.
Totally. Or you show up there and act a fool, asking all types of questions, and he'd be like, where is this coming from? Thank God that man's insecurities didn't pour all over you.
Listen. And that's what I'm talking about. That was one of the hardest things about being in a long distance relationship. I know this is not what this episode is about, so we won't do that to y'all, but like, just a tip. Listen, you need to be very grounded on your feelings and the feelings for that person and the trust you have for this person, because people are going to try to shake that up just because they have been hurt.
Yeah.
They just want you to feel hurt. And if
right.
you need to just be like so in tune with that for yourself, because if not, people going to come for it.
Right. Okay. Let's continue this conversation at some point. Yeah.
More to come on that. You and I apply down. So how do you practice self-care? Like, I know you talk about silence being really important to you. Tell me more about that. Why is silence so important to you?
Because I can hear myself when I'm quiet. When I'm talking, I'm just hearing the things that I've already processed coming out. But when I'm quiet, I can hear what's actually going on. I can also listen to my body better when I'm quiet. Like, where am I holding tension? Where am I not breathing into what hurts and why does it hurt? Where is it coming from? Or what doesn't hurt? Where am I nice and loose? I meditate regularly because it keeps me grounded. I'm really into self-care. I mean, it's necessary, but I love just giving myself the freedom to do what I need to do to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that, because people hear the words death and doula, and they automatically have all these ideas of what it's like to do your work. And if you are thinking that Alua is down and sad and, you know, oh my God, this is terrible, why am I doing this work? That's not the woman or the energy I'm receiving from her on this conversation. Like, she's full of life. That's really the best way I can describe it. And I love that. Because I didn't come on here with the most energy. I've been like really tired over the past few days, really fatigued. And I told my husband, no, I've been waiting to talk to this woman. I'm not about to let the universe know that I'm not serious about talking to her. I'm not rescheduling.
Doing it today. We are doing it today.
So much energy. I love it.
Great.
I love it so much. How did you know you were available for this space, like, to do this?
I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. I had to grow into it because there were parts of myself that weren't at all. But this was it. This is all going to be it. Like, I became singularly focused. I'd say obsessed, but that has such a negative connotation. But I became so focused on how we die. Not this, you know, there's this like goth thing that's this obsession with death that has, I mean, positive and negative connotations. That's not my jam. My jam is how we do it, what it means about us, what we learned by looking at it, how the medical systems are set up, how we're culturally dying, and how culturally we're denying dying. And that I did a lot of reading and study and spent time by myself and a lot of thinking and exploring. And then as I was doing that, the way that this work would look started to emerge. And so some patience also. Because I was clear on that bus that I was going to do this work. It wasn't until a year and a half later that I started going with Grace and was like, all right, this is how I do this. And in that year and a half, I was in it, doing a lot of my own self-work also, looking at my darkness, the depression, how I'd gotten there, what it was about, who I needed to be, the apologies I made for myself, all the shoulds that I'd put on myself, reading nonstop about death and dying, interning with folks, I grew into it.
Thank you for sharing that, because I feel so connected and attracted to what you're doing. Just being able to be with people when they are emotionally unavailable to be with themselves. Like, that is so powerful. And And just as you talk about how much work you have to do for yourself in order to be available to create room for going with grace, you just like, I don't know what the term is in my head. Like it almost like validates or like reminds me. It's a reminder how important it is to do the inner work for us to create
Always.
room to do what we're destined to do.
To do the outer work. Like the inner work has to happen first.
Yeah.
You know that expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. We know that one so well, but what if you can't tell that the cup has cracks?
Ooh.
Like you have to pay attention to the cup, because if you're pouring it and the things are just leaking everywhere, it's going to stay empty. Like we have to spend some time caring for the vessel. God must do the inner work first. Must do the inner work first.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that. Like, what if the cup has cracks in it?
Yeah, you need to be able to tell. And the only way to be able to tell is to do the inner work first.
Why did you start logging your dreams? And then why did you stop?
I started logging my dreams because they're so funky. And I was trying to see if I could make any sense of them. I've been fascinated with this idea of dreams and what the point is, or if there is a point at all. And so I started logging them to see if I could learn something or see if they made any sense somehow. And why did I stop? Probably got interested in something else again. Yeah. Oh, no, I remember. I started waking up with somebody a lot more often.
Ooh.
Not the guy that I'm with now. Yeah. And then so, first thing in the morning wasn't let me scroll down my dreams. It was, hey, boo.
Hey.
Hey.
Anybody talk about no dreams right now? You know what we doing.
Although realistically, now I wake up and I talk about my dreams with my man. Like he constantly asks me what I dreamt, and I'm like, oh my God, you won't believe it.
That's amazing. How does it feel about your work? Not like this is important to your quality of doing your work, but curiosity.
It is important actually, because I need to have like solid, supportive partners, people that are just down for what I'm doing. And he has experienced a lot of death for somebody his age, and he knows firsthand how valuable it is. Because I was also able to support him through the death of his mother recently. And yeah, he knows this better than anybody actually that I've ever met. It's like, yo, this matters and it's important. And you do it, boo. Do it.
Do it, boo. Put it on a t-shirt. Do it, boo.
That's a good one.
_ my man. Do it, boo.
Do it.
Listen, do it. What is the most challenging part for you of doing this work emotionally?
Separating myself from my clients and what they're experiencing and what they're going through. But this is, again, where the self-care comes in, because I have to be able to tell what's mine and what's theirs. Obviously, I grieve with people, but sometimes I also grieve for them. And I need to be able to tell which is with them, which is for them, which is my own. And, I find that people that are generally drawn to this work are people that are heart wide open type of folks. But that means that all types of things are getting in there. And so we need to be able to learn how to separate a bit. That's the hardest part for me.
I know you talked about how you work really hard at not projecting yourself onto your clients. How do you do that?
Oh, so hard. Just always check in. If again, with inner work, right? If I'm not aware that my fears of death are around my fear of my partner dying, when I show up at a home and we have a married couple and he is about the same age and she's about the same age that I am, I'm going to project all types of stuff onto her and onto him subconsciously. But if it's in my conscious mind that these are the things that I fear, then I can do better at keeping them in check. If I'm making any assumptions about what she's experiencing, I need to check those assumptions. Yeah. Checking by doing the work, by doing the inner work and checking the assumptions.
I imagine how challenging that is, because it's challenging just not projecting ourselves to anybody, to the stranger on the street or to, our favorite nieces and nephews. Like, it's so hard to do that because we think it comes from a really good, loving place, but it doesn't always manifest that way, or it's not always needed either.
Absolutely.
The hardest part.
That is the hardest part. It's the lack of judgment and like actual compassion and empathy and not sympathy, and finding ways to, remember that everybody's having their own experience, which is different than mine, as much as I think I might understand it.
I appreciate you saying that, because when my uncle was murdered, so I live in the States. Most of my family, like 95% of my family, immediate family, they are all in Honduras. So I went down for funeral stuff, came back up, got back into the office, and my husband is the closest person to me in the state in which I was, as far as like really, really intimate. Like I have really close sorority sisters too, but he was like there. Like I live with this person. So I just remember feeling like so consumed by my grief and him not being in a position to help me, because I just felt like he just didn't get it. And then I also felt like I couldn't feel bad for him not getting it either, because he hadn't gone through that experience. And I think like 3 months in, I thought for the first time that everyone was having a different grieving experience. Yes, we all loved this person, and he loved all of us, but the pain that I was going through was different than the pain that my mother was going through and my sister was going through. And that kind of became a little bit overwhelming, because I just felt like, dang, nobody gets what I'm going through. Do you find that in your work?
Yeah, but it's one of the major tenets is to constantly remember that everybody's experience is different all the time. Everybody's experience is different. So particularly when working with grief, people grieve differently. Some people shut down altogether. People get angry. People cry incessantly. People get big anxiety around death, kind of like how you were experiencing earlier. Like people have all types of experiences, and we need to hold space for the experiences to differ. I think which is why part of the work of it is constantly validating somebody's feelings. I may not be able to understand exactly what it is that you're experiencing, but I can bear witness to it. And that sometimes holds a lot of power.
Thank you for saying that. And I also feel like we can use that with anything in our lives. Like we may not know, because we won't know exactly what that person is feeling, because we cannot be inside that person's body, you know, so you will never know exactly what they're going through. So just being able to be available to witness it. I love how you said that, because you can literally take that with anything in life, not just death.
Everything. That's why this work, I mean, it's all parts of life. You know, death and life are just opposite sides of the same coin. So all the things that I think about death are fully applicable when thinking about life itself.
What is it like working with the families?
Hard, because they're in a very big moment. You know, this is like a huge thing that happened to them. And also, they're the people that benefit the most from the support. I think the dying people do as well, but the family are the ones that live afterward and then have to integrate this experience into their lives. Yeah.
How can the average person that doesn't, and when I say average person, I mean like someone that's not a death doula, that's not an expert in this work, or doesn't have a lot of experience in this work, how can we support our loved ones when they're dealing with grief?
Try not to project and bear witness rather than try to make things better. Like we can't fix grief at all. You know, you can't fix grief. It's just a process. And sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years, but being present to it without trying to fix anything, and also without anything that begins with you should really not say that. So anything that sounds like mitigating what they've experienced, at least blah, blah, blah. There's probably also something not to say, like I hear this often with miscarriages or with stillbirths. Well, at least you were able to get pregnant, or at least you now know that she's in a better place, or at least now, nope, don't do that either. Just stay present, grounded, compassionate, and don't try to fix anything.
I love that you say the at least part, because that's one that people say often. And I think it comes from like just helping you see the upside, right? Helping you see that it's not all terrible. But I think when it's said, it doesn't deliver the results that people are looking for, because you're like, okay, but they still dead though. So the pain is still here. So what am I supposed to do?
And it is all terrible. And it is all terrible. You know, it's just like, oh, but look on the bright side. And when you're in the midst of that, there is no bright side.
What is the bright side?
There's no bright side. All it serves to do is invalidate their experience. This different perspective just invalidates. And so what we get to do is validate. That sounds rough. Man, how can I support you? And sometimes rather than asking things like, what you need, because it's very hard to tell what you need, you could just offer to do something like, I'm going to bring dinner tonight, or I'll just drop dinner off if you don't want to see me, rather than be like, well, let me know what you need. I'll do anything for you. We want to be helpful that way, but it's harder.
Mm-hmm. When I was going through my uncle's passing, I remember one of my friends, she was like, I'm coming over. And I was like, I don't really know if I want company like that, but it'll be nice to see you. She said, well, I'm coming over and we're going to eat together. If that's okay with you, I'm just going to come. And even if you don't want to talk, I'm just going to sit in silence in that room until you feel like you need to talk. And she came over, and I just remember having the most amazing time. And it had been a while that since I had been able to feel just like a little bit of joy, not like a lot of joy, but just like a little bit of joy, just enough of joy to be like, I enjoy this. Mm-hmm. And I remember really feeling that with her at that time. And I'm getting a little teary-eyed because we're human, and when we feel these things, we're still working through them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also what a gift just to be with you without, it sounds like she didn't need to do anything, mm-hmm. but just to be with you and allow you to be whoever you need to be during that time. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. That's when we can offer some proper support to people that are grieving.
Mm-hmm. And it could be really hard for the person wanting to give the support because they are not used to not being needed in a certain way, or to provide without the label of need on it. In my mother, and I picked up some of these habits from her, where it's at a point I was defining myself by how much people needed me. Mm-hmm. So if you don't need me, then I must not be doing my job, Right. And I think part of my uncle dying taught me that he was the first, and I think he was the first person to love me unconditionally. He didn't need anything from me, and this person just loved me. And I mean, I know some of us think like our parents too, but I feel like with my mother and my father, there were things that I felt I didn't feel the same way about them. I felt like I still had to have some good grades or things like that some conditions were still in place for me and for my existence. But I learned literally I learned this last year that he was the first person to love me unconditionally, and that's why it was so hard for me when he died, because I didn't have to be anything for him. Sure. And it can be really hard to understand that in just going through that learning 2 years after his passing is I'm still going, I'm still learning. And that was also very kind of crazy for me.
Perpetually, and still processing, right? Because after the death now, it's been, you said 2 years, and you're still learning things about yourself and your relationship, even though he's not present anymore.
Mm-hmm. And at first, when I got that realization, it was this day, and I spent 3 hours journaling. I don't know what sent me down this, but something quote unquote triggered me, and I was like, okay, we need to get to the bottom of this trigger. And then I just went on this spiral of questions on myself, and I landed in that spot that he and I were. I never felt like I had to meet an expectation for him to receive his love, and I started thinking, who else is like that for me in my life? Yeah. And then I realized that I couldn't really say that for a lot of people. They love me and I love them, but our love is very conditional. It's very if you stop doing this, I'm definitely going to stop doing this type of thing.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I had that experience with myself about my uncle that I realized that that's how I was loving my husband too. Very conditional. And now I'm finally available to loving him without these conditions and just seeing him for who he is, which is really interesting when you just want to see people for who they are. Because then you just be just have a great time. It doesn't matter if I'm a part of it. It doesn't matter if you're doing it. As long as you're doing it for you, that's really that matters. And I feel like I'm just learning a whole new person now, 7 years in. It's kind of crazy.
That's fun. That's so fun. Yeah. How exciting.
Very exciting. Because it's we're starting a whole new relationship. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. Hey, boo.
do that.
Do it, boo.
So it's really, really, really fun and exciting. So you talked about your funeral. You want it to be a party, a celebration.
Yeah, full party.
Have you picked your outfit?
Well, I'm going to be naked in a shroud.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. A hot pink and orange raw silk shroud. I haven't found it yet, though. I'm still looking for it. And when I do, then I'll buy and put it under my bed or something like that. Yeah.
Why did you decide to go with naked?
Because I don't need the clothes.
Because you're dying.
Because I'll be dead. Like, I was fine. I don't like clothes too much when I live either. Why am I gonna put that? It doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense at all.
We put like shoes on dead people too, and I'm like, oh, they're not walking, right? All right, that's fine. Let's do it. That's fine.
That was my thought when I saw Aretha Franklin's pictures of her funeral and the outfit changes. Actually, I was going to ask if you were going to have outfit changes, but since you're not wearing clothes, we already know the answer is no. And I'm like, why does she have shoes on? Like, she's literally not going to go anywhere. But I get it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, also, I get that we want to like have an image of them and make them look glamorous and beautiful, even in their death. And yeah, but for me, I'm going to be a body that housed me at some point. And all my jewelry's going to be off, and I'm just going to be naked in the shroud, and then they're going to put me in the ground, and that's going to be it.
Wow. I haven't thought about it, but since I heard you talking about your funeral, I was like, maybe I got to think about that. I definitely got to think about that because, I don't want no funny business. And I know my mother, she could be very she has a very strong personality. And I already told my husband, I want to be cremated. I don't necessarily want to go back to the ground. But as I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm having second thoughts. I do know I don't want to be in a casket. That's one thing I know. I'm like, I don't want to be on nobody's Facebook page in a casket, talk about, we love you, Nori. Like, I don't want none of that. So if you're listening, I don't want none of that. If you see it, report it. So I know that much, but I haven't thought about the other stuff. And when I was listening to you and these conversations that you've had with people and in the places where you've been able to have these conversations, I just feel like we need to start talking about this now. Like, how soon do we need to start talking about this?
I think from the very beginning. I mean, obviously, I don't think we should be talking with children about death in this manner. I think kids should still be involved in the conversations. But I think that probably around people graduating from high school, they should start making end-of-life plans. Granted, people who have not yet graduated high school also die. But up until then, parents are largely in control of what happens near the end, although it really helps to have the kids' wishes. I saw this one really sweet. I think he was like a 5-year-old boy that wrote out what he wanted his funeral to be like. And so his parents did it. And he was dying, so it was clear. And his parents talked to him about it. So that's some evidence that it even works for children. But I think when people are graduating high school, they should start making solid end-of-life plans. Like, just get in there.
Yeah, I'm way behind. So where can we start planning? Like, if I was like, Alua, can you please tell me where to start? Like, where would you direct me to?
I would suggest that you start by considering where all your important documents are. Where's your passport, your social security card, your house deed if you have one, your marriage license, all those things, and put them in one place. That's an easy starting place. Next, and I'd ask you to probably start going through your accounts online and try to figure out what all your login and passwords are. And then start thinking about your funeral and start thinking about your money, start thinking about life support, start thinking about who you want to make your decisions for you if you can't anymore. It's also a very solid place to start healthcare decision making. But the funeral, burial, cremation, those things are very important. But the options are kind of limited when it causes a lot more challenges when thinking about medical decision making and who is in charge of making your decisions. You're married, and so you mentioned that your mom has a strong personality and perhaps might see things for the end of your life differently than your husband. Since you're married, your husband is de facto your primary decision maker, right? But you should probably write down what your wishes are as well, so that if there's any dispute or question, he can say, look, she wrote it right here.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons why I asked, because I just remember when my uncle was murdered, everybody had so many ideas and so many thoughts and this and that. And I was like, if he had just written this down, none of this would be an issue, at least not in this way. Because people, what this is saying, that people show their true colors in death and funerals and marriages or whatever, or weddings or something like that. First of all, That's true. I've been through both.
Yeah,
And some colorful stuff comes out around those times of life.
absolutely.
But I think that was one of the first things that I was like, I wanted my parents, like, I'm like, I need you guys to start thinking about this. And my mom is like, I'm not. I already spoke to God. God already told me that when my time comes, he's going to let me know and I'm going to spend all my money beforehand. I was like, okay, but in the event that God and you have a mishap with this communication line, can we get this kind of going? And I'm just having the hardest time getting her to start this conversation. What tips do you have for me?
Particularly when working with parents, I mean, it's useful to think about what went wrong or what was difficult for her, like with your uncle's death, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Not the manner, but maybe the things around it, the challenges that you saw in the families,
mm-hmm.
and how she can avoid that. If she had challenges with it, I'm sure she doesn't want to recreate it. So how she can avoid it for herself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great place to start. Yeah. And also, if she's not willing to look at it like, oh, this is what I need to do for myself, maybe she can also consider, how can I make it easier on my children? Because I find that parents sometimes,
I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna come back and let you know. Like, I'll update you on it. But I'm gonna try this approach. I have not tried this approach, so we're gonna see if she's responsive to it. But I think, like everyone, it can be really hard. And after my uncle died, I really started detaching myself from people. Even like my best friend. And the other day, I had this conversation with her, and she was like, "Okay, you're being kind of weird now." But I told her how much I loved her, and I was like, "I'm preparing myself for your death," and she was like, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to hear all of this."
Yeah, sounds familiar.
But I was just like, it's important for me that know how I feel about you, because tomorrow is not promised. And in case something happens to you, I love you like a lot. Yeah. And I would be very devastated if something happened to you. So I have to begin that process now. And she just wasn't, I don't think she was ready for that type. And she even admitted to it. She was like, I haven't been to an experience like you've been through. So I can understand that I don't understand. But she was like, it was very weird for her. And that was supposed to be my plan for everyone that I love. So after that, I kind of took a step back because I didn't know how to communicate it to people in a way that they wouldn't think I was being insane or that maybe suicidal or something, which I'm not. I'm fine. I'm doing this because I'm fine. And it was
doing it.
It was hard.
Do it, boo. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And if it's, think about what's the discomfort for you, right? Because if it's hard because of how they're receiving it, does that change your intention in doing it? And also, does it, if somebody were to die that you did not say this thing to, you probably have greater regrets. So then making them uncomfortable for 15 minutes, talking about how much you love them. And if you still are too challenged to do it, write letters, mail them.
Yeah. I like that. I'm going to do the letters, and I'm going to continue doing it because I feel like very empowered by this conversation and just seeing even more important how important this is. And I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, boo. You're going to call me, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it, boo.
Do it, boo.
So we're getting ready to wrap up the conversation. I'm really grateful for our time together. And one of the questions that I ask the guests is if they can share with me a tool that they have found indispensable for their self-care. What do you have for us?
Meditation, indispensable. And also, this is one that's pretty loaded, but allowing myself to eat whatever I want to eat. Sometimes that is potato chips, but
that's like a whole new podcast.
Exactly, because it's loaded with body image stuff. But freedom to eat what I want to eat. Wow. And meditate. Yeah.
I love that. Earlier, this is a bonus one. Earlier, you mentioned that you read a lot. Also, I like to think of myself as an avid reader. I don't know how accurate that is. But please share a book with me that is like, this is like a place to start, Nori.
Ooh, what do you want to think about? What are you curious about?
I'm just curious about getting comfortable with death.
Gosh, so many of them. One that is so dense and that has a lot of philosophy, but also some practical wisdom. And it is Die Wise by a man named Stephen Jenkinson. It's dense though. It's not light reading. Okay. And that, he has such a command of the English language, and he's poetic. But sometimes I read it and I need to close it for a second to process the words. But that book is so juicy.
Okay. And I'll be sure I put the book in the title of the comments of the show notes, yeah, so that you can check it out and you can learn some stuff and we can all learn some stuff together. We need to talk about this and we need to become normal with talking about how normal death is.
Yeah.
We can stop running away from it.
Let's normalize death.
Let's normalize death. That's going to be the title of this podcast. Let's normalize death.
Great.
Alua, thank you so much for being a part of this. Where can people learn more about you? Is there an online course on how to give myself my own death meditation out there on your website? Like, what's going on?
There is no death meditation online, although I've considered making one, but it's really helpful to sit and process afterward. But there is a death doula training course for people that are interested in learning how to become death doulas themselves and to do this work. You can find me on the internet at goingwithgrace.com, which is the name of my company, Going With Grace, and on Instagram by the same name. And you can always just Google me, Alua Arthur, and you'll find me.
Boss.
I'm not hard.
Google her. Google her.
Google me.
Really do it and watch all the content that you see when he pops up. If you have been feeling like this is a conversation that you are either need to have because you have a loved one that's you think is closer to it, just remember that we all close to it. We just don't know. And
correct.
And we have to start talking about this now. Start asking yourself these questions now. And do you have any resources on your website on what kind of questions to start asking yourself or things like that?
I do have like a PDF, 10 questions to ask yourself as you prepare for peaceful death. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to also link to her website on the show notes. Yeah, make sure y'all check it out. I'm going to go and download. I think I already downloaded this form, but I'm going to check it out and I'm going to ask myself all these questions and see how it goes. Get on this journey early.
Yes. Maybe late.
Yeah, depending on what happens in the next minute, because we have is right now.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. Thank you, Nori.
Thank you. This was so great. I'm so grateful for you. I'm glad that the universe saw it fit in that we got to talk and that we got to do it at this stage. So
likewise. Yeah. Likewise.